Welcome to Irwin Analytics. I'm Don, and today we're going to look at the MIDS Home Market Advisor. Our mission statement is to protect home buyers from getting financially hurt and to help home buyers get into the housing market at the right time. Our audience are home buyers, investors, data science, econ, and finance students. There's a link to the canned presentation of this project when we were developing it last year. It started in August and concluded in last December, and we continue to train the model every month and publish it. Feel free to watch that presentation. If not today, we're just going to go through the background, macro changes in the housing market, model tuning. We do this every month. What I'm speaking to today is February of this month, and we will have the data from March published within the next couple of days. We're going to revisit key markets and then come up with a conclusion. But before we do that, let's go ahead and look at the application itself. So as you can see, here we have our application. There's a tutorial and presentation. There's information about our competition, our data pipelines, an econ module, which has a bunch of very useful information about economic metrics in the housing market, calculator, which allows you to modify the input parameters in terms of your budget and interest rates and tell you what you can afford. But the heart of the entire system is this market advice module, which allows you to look at an MSA or a county and get advice on whether or not it's a good time to buy. So let's go ahead and look at Los Angeles. And as we can see, in aggregate, we're getting a downward signal. And that's because we're looking at demand and supply side signals. Days on market, we can see it's 70% higher than last February. And on average, during this entire period of time, it's about 30% higher. So demand is lower in Los Angeles. We then look at the supply side as indicated by inventory signal. And we see that we have 50% more inventory on the market than this period of time last year. And we feed those parameters along with interest rates and other things to our machine learning model, and it tells us that it believes prices should be about $70,000 less in Los Angeles. And we can repeat this for other MSAs and counties. So let's look at Las Vegas and Nevada, because that's always an interesting place. And as we can see, on aggregate, we're getting the same negative signal. But in fact, it's much worse in Las Vegas because days on market is 131%. So demand is even lower there. And then over the period of time, it's 77% higher. Similarly, supply is 105% higher than the same period of time. Low demand, high supply. We feed it into our AI model, and it says that the price should be about $80,000 less than what it is today. So it's a very tough market. And as we said, we can repeat this for any county or MSA in the entire country because we've trained them all. So next, let's go ahead and look at the background of this project. What this project was a capstone or thesis project, but it gained so much support and so many friends decided to start using it, I just kept it alive. But it keeps the research, design, software engineering, statistical analysis, data engineering, machine learning, and data visualization, all of those disciplines in a data science project. It brings them all together and provides this very useful application which users can use to get a snapshot of a given market. The tech stack that we used is represented by all of these logos, and in fact this is only a subset, or it's most of them, but there's a few more that we had to use. So there's a lot that went into getting this thing to work properly. Next, we're going to look at some macro changes in the overall housing market. The first thing we're going to look at is the new mortgage applications. This is according to the Mortgage Bankers Association, and this is very, very sobering because if we look here, what we see that in April of this year, there was a precipitous drop, and we are now at one of the lowest levels in mortgage applications in the entire history of this index being tracked. Matter of fact, during the great financial crisis in 2008, 2009, it was higher than it is today. So this portends very negatively for the housing market overall. Secondly, we're seeing FHA home delinquencies. So we're now at about 12% overall. The 30-day is going up. The foreclosure rate is actually still quite low, but this sort of preamble or precursor or leading indicator, if you will, doesn't speak well to where the market is going at the lower end of the market. And then we have Professor Robert Shiller. Now, Professor Robert Shiller came out last month or a month and a few days ago and said that he believes that the housing market is still very overpriced, and in his own words, you should wait for a little while. Professor Robert Shiller is the author of the Case-Shiller Index, and this indicates or demonstrates the cyclicality in the housing market. Certain markets have higher highs and lower troughs than others, but this pattern of cyclicality exists. Our thesis is that we are currently moving in this direction as opposed to the up direction. All the data appears to bear that out. Time will tell. His suggestion is to wait for another 6 months because, in his own words, you might get it for less. This is very gratifying to us and to me personally in terms of this project, because the academic underpinnings for this project was built upon the work of Professor Robert Shiller, Carl Case, and John Quigley. Their papers on this are listed in the About section of the website. Now let's get into looking at some of the changes that we've made to the model. We've added days on market as a covariate regressor to our machine learning model. We're using PyTorch forecasting. The reason we did this is because initially our model performed relatively well, but as interest rates stabilized and inventory in some regards stabilized, the variable which was moving was days on market. We added that to the model, we trained it, we tested it, it yielded good results. It seems to be a better model for the inclusion of that regressor. So now let's look at some key markets. We're going to look at Austin, Texas, because this was one of the markets that we looked at when we were developing this model. The reason we looked at it is because only 14 months ago, this was one of the hottest markets in the entire country, with people outbidding one another. And just 14 months later, we see that it's a much, much different picture. We see that in Austin, Texas, February over February, we are at about 260% higher days on market, so very low demand. And the supply side is even worse in that we're at 334% higher year over year inventory for the month of February, and through the months analyzed, it's very, very high. And so it's no surprise that when we feed that into the neural net, it believes that prices should be about 19% lower than what they currently are, or a full $120,000. So that's very tough in that market. But not all markets are facing those same sort of headwinds. We look at Morris, New Jersey, which is a county market, and we see that even though days on market are a little bit higher than this period last year, not by a lot. It's a very tight pattern. And then we look at the supply side, and we see that during some of the months of this year, inventory was actually lower than what it was last year. It's leveling out here, but overall it seems to be a relatively stable market. The neural net believes that prices should be about 6% lower. However, we are at a historically low inventory for this market. So that all suggests that this might be a more stable market. And we actually saw that during the last great financial crisis and the housing crash, that certain markets where there was a lot of demand and there was a good pool of buyers that had purchasing power, they stayed relatively stable. In conclusion, we just have to say that the housing market does continue to face very serious headwinds. Certain markets, people are going to have to wait for like a decade. Like in Austin, if they've got to cash in their house now, they're going to lose their down payment. It's going to be a tough situation. Mortgage demand is almost at an all-time low, which means that there's not a lot of buyers in the market. Inflation-adjusted prices are actually higher than what they were during the 2006-2007 peak of the last bubble. So that's pretty sobering. We're seeing signs that the lower end of the housing market in terms of the FHA loans are showing signs of distress and weakness. And certain markets are moving towards historic inventory highs and very long days on market. And days on market, like I said, appear to be much higher than for the last several years. And we'll continue to publish new data. This is February's data. March's data will be out in a few days. Thank you for your attention. My background is that I hold a Bachelor's of Science in Information Systems from Cal State Northridge and a Master's of Science in Data Science from UC Berkeley. Thank you for tuning in to this broadcast from Irwin Analytics. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you use the application.
Not everybody